All right, I'll get you guys started. So first of all, thanks for taking time to come on to this postseason meeting, and I appreciate Rick and Mike and Roger and Rod and their preparation and their work all season as coordinators. They do really outstanding work on behalf of wrestling officials across the state, and I would argue that our program really is one of the tops in the country because of their support and their expertise. And I feel real good about what we've done all year and our work during the season leading up to the postseason tournaments. So just a couple things from me at the league. First of all, I feel we've had a really good year. I think Rick feels the same in that we're focusing on safety of the wrestlers. That's our first priority, and making calls that need to be made relative to dangerous holds and so forth. And no one wants to eject a wrestler or take those extreme measures, but that's our job. That's part of the deal, that if those things come about in a match, that we're going to take care of that. And you guys have done a really good job of that. And I would say moving into the postseason, that even though it's a section meet or a state tournament meet or whatever it happens to be, we still need to make those calls. And I know that you don't want to make calls that might decide, who's going to advance or those kind of things. But again, you're in the postseason for a reason, because you do a nice job and you're going to take care of business. And we would expect that in the postseason you do the same. So keep up the good work with it, I would say, and stay the course. If you have any concerns, questions as we go through the section meets and tournaments and so forth, please connect with any of the coordinators, Rick, Mike, Rod, or Roger, and they will certainly answer your questions. But you have no bigger cheerleader than me. I know that you're going to do a great job throughout the section tournament and the state tournament, and I'm proud of all of you and your great work. So, Rick, anything that you need me to address further? If not, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Oh, Jason, thank you very much. Nothing further to address, and thanks for kicking us off. Your leadership of this group is always so welcome, and it's fantastic. So I really appreciate everything. Tomorrow, when the recording comes in, if you could have somebody send it to me. I know there's a lot of guys that are actually kicking off tonight that want to see this recording, so I'll send that out to them. Yeah,
no problem. I'll get it edited sometime tomorrow. If tomorrow afternoon, probably, and then we'll let every official know in the state that it's there, and they can view it. So
perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Jason.
Yep, you bet. Have a great meeting, you guys.
Hey guys, welcome. This will be, I think, my fourth year of hosting a pre-postseason call, and I think these are probably the most important calls we have. You guys are in the postseason. Almost all of you, I believe, are in the postseason that I see on the screen. You're here for a reason, and Jason mentioned that. We're going to have a great postseason coming up. We've had an incredible season this year. I have to really hand it to all of you. The issues that come across my desk from the league that need review have been less this year than ever. And I think the communication we all have and the management that we've all done of our matches as professionals, as professional referees. I mean, we know this sport, we know it very well. We keep ourselves in a professional manner on the mat, yet we remain approachable. And I think you've done a great job of that. Deflecting questions to the ADs that belong at the AD table rather than the official table. You've done an excellent job of that. And I think we're really getting a lot of compliments from the league and from other activity directors around the state that this is exactly the way it needs to be. Send our coaches to us. We don't know some of these questions are asking you, but we as officials, we don't have to get into those types of questions. You guys have done an excellent job of that. A few things came up this year that we deal with every year, just issues on officials, but very few. I would be very remiss to not go through a couple situations that were just fantastic and really made me proud of our staff. We had a situation where one of our officials, Joe O'Connor, out of Gold Country, had a tough go. There was a noisy fan, and Joe held in there. Joe stuck in with the match. Joe did what he needed to do when he needed assistance, and it was more than he could handle. He went to the site administrator. He went to the coaches and asked for some assistance, got through the situation. That's hard to do. And you're hearing this from a guy who years and years and years ago, when I first started officiating, I went right up into the stands to let somebody know what I thought of their comment. Don't do that. Please don't do that. But hats off to Joe. Just a fantastic example of professionalism, passion management, if you will. They were getting under his skin, but he knew how to handle it. And Joe's a top-notch official, and I really want to applaud him for that. Scott Snowball has a website out there with some videos on it. And if you haven't been on there, maybe I can ask Scott to put that in the comment section so that you guys can link into that and peek at some stuff. The next comment I want to make is on a very perfect example of head and assisting officiating. Rod Frost and Scott Larson were doing a very competitive match down at the Clash, and two top officials. Rod was on the whistle, made a call on a takedown. Scott was in a certain position where he did not think that control was actually there, and he had a better view of it. So he immediately, as an assistant, stepped up, got Rod's attention, stopped the match, had a conversation, and Rod literally listened to him, understood what he was saying, turned around, made an adjustment to the match, set the wrestlers, and restarted. That's exactly how we do it. It's exactly how head and assisting needs to be done. And if Scott can put that link out on the comment section, and you guys can go take a look at that, you'll see the situation they were in, and it was very nice handling of it. Probably the second best example of head and assist that I've seen in a long time. The first, well, give me a call. I'll tell you about the match I did. But congratulations, Scott and Rod. That was really great handling. Another situation where we really saw some fantastic professionalism from an official was a very unique and a very difficult situation. Jim Andres just really handled himself as the professional he is. Called what he could see, didn't call what he couldn't see, and explained it perfectly to the coaches, settled a situation down that was getting greatly out of hand, and single-handedly took very good care of it. And getting sucked into the emotion of some of these situations, like we all can and have done in our past, is something that Jim was able to avert. Did a great job, and applause to Jim for that. Probably one of the more unique matches I have ever seen, and I got a chance to witness this, was done by Jeff Adams. He was reffing a girls' duel, and it was right down to the last match. And wrestler A needed a fall to tie the duel, and I don't know how it would have turned out with a tie. I didn't have all that detail, but they were fighting hard to get that fall. And as she had her opponent over on her back, holding for three, looking like that fall was coming, Jeff noticed blood from the defensive wrestler, stopped the match, awarded the 3 near fall +1 for match stoppage. It was 11-0. That made it a tech fall, and they missed tying the duel by 1 point. And it was completely out of everyone's hands, Jeff's included. It was a tech fall. They needed a fall to tie it. Emotions kind of erupted a little bit, but Jeff did a great job of managing it, talking to the wrestler, explaining the situation, talking to both coaches, and just calming the situation down. But it was one of the most unique matches I'd ever seen. But another example of just perfect management by the official, level-headedness and professionalism. And I'll say this a bit tonight: professionalism, yet maintain approachability. Let the coaches come up and talk to you, but be professional. And as I look across these screens, I see all of you guys that I haven't seen in ages. And when we get to the state tournament and we get to the sections and we get into postseason, we love to get together, and it's just a ton of fun. We do that stuff in the locker room, and we do our high-fiving and our hugs and all this stuff in the locker room. Out on the mat, maintain professionals like you guys are, and again, maintain approachability by the coaches, and we're going to be great. Those are the big matches that I wanted to talk about. There's many, many more that I have missed, but those are good examples of the great team we've got. We've got a list of things we want to go through and cover tonight, and then we're going to get into some Q&A. This call is set up for 2 hours. I'm hoping to be less than that. So Mike Roth's going to take part of this. Roger Wilson's going to take part of this. Rod Frost couldn't make the meeting tonight because his idea of taking his wife out on a Valentine's date is a wild game. And so hats off to Pam for allowing that. But Rod won't be with us tonight. So we're just going to start going through a few things we want to cover, that want you to be mindful of in the postseason. Let's get into weigh-ins. I'm sorry, covering the success story. Let's go right into weigh-ins, and Mike, if you want to take that and step us through it, please.
I will, Rick. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Skin checks is the first part of weigh-in, so make sure we can start those at whatever the weigh-in time is. You can start those ahead of time to get the wrestlers ready to speed things up. If you're doing duels, you can have skin check and weigh in by team, or you can do it by weights. And sometimes it's easier just to go through a team. But remember, if the team's not ready, you can't start. You can start the skin checks, but they can't start weigh-ins. If there's a kid missing or whatever, they have to wait for that kid. You can't do that. For the individual ones, we do the skin checks, and then we call them up by weight, and then we close the weight. You got to make sure that, and you got to work with your region site, your section site. There might be 6 scales, and they're doing two of the weights on one scale, 3 on the other. That's great. But remember, if somebody doesn't make weight, they get 2 chances on their original scale, and then they get to step on every scale. So I would suggest, if you're doing that, take that wrestler with you and go to all the scales and just hold up the one that you're working on. Give them that shot. It's 1 chance. And another reminder on that too, if they start with socks on, they got to keep socks on. You can't, you choose how you're going to do it. So you weigh in correctly with the right uniform. Socks are optional. If you're underweight, you can't put socks on to make weight. And if you're overweight, you can't take socks off to make weight. When a weight's closed, all the teams have weighed in, we close the weight. Make sure that we sign the sheets. And in the duels, make sure that there's copy at the head table. And coaches sometimes are signing off, but we want to double check. So if 2 coaches are doing the 2 different schools, when you check with them and ask both coaches, are all these correct? And make sure that we have them correct. And then they have to be at the table for weighing in, or for checking in, so that we can check that. I think Roger's going to talk about the checking in at the head table. Weights is an important thing, so let's get it right first. So then when we're at the table and wrestling, we don't have to worry about the weigh-in stuff. Any questions on weigh-ins or skin checks?
All right, thanks, Mike. Huge point on that. Make sure that if a wrestler does not make weight, that they are on and off the main scale twice. On and off the main scale twice. If they need to go, and if there are additional scales that are weigh-in scales, you walk them immediately to that scale. So shut the weigh-in down, walk that wrestler immediately to any other scale that's available. They have an opportunity to get on that scale once. And if they make weight, then great, move on. If not, handle that. Make sure that sheet is signed, and that'll get into the secretary head, and they will get that entered into track wrestling. All right, thanks, Mike. And if there are any questions, just shoot them into the comment section and we'll take off on it. Roger, can you take us into head table check-in and such?
Sure. It's just important that one of the refs needs to be at that table. And if you got two guys reffing, you can set it up where the rover is at the table, and then the next match you flip the new rover is at the table. But one ref should be at the table at all times to make sure the coaches are bringing their wrestlers up and giving the right name. You got to realize that if you've got two wrestlers coming up to the table, and let's say a 52-pounder and a 160-pounder, they come up at the table, and if there's a forfeit, you need to make sure that that is recorded. So if it's we're going to wrestle 152, and the one team is forfeiting, so the 60-pounder is there. He's okay. He can wrestle for the next match. He can, when the 52 is taken care of, then he's introduced. You just want to make sure you don't have problems, that everything's recorded properly. I'm trying to think of what else I should mention. Well, that's about it, I believe.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Roger. You know, one of the things that has always been beneficial to us is working with your head table so that they realize right away that when it's Green's turn to check in, they take their information from Green. Red may be coming up saying something, and I ask the table, just hold your hand up, listen to Green, get their information, get it entered, and then take what Red has to say. The table can save us in these situations. So let's please make sure that you work with your table and talk to them about that. And thanks for that piece, Roger. You know, proper check-in is what we're looking for, and strict management prior to is the best way to ensure a proper check-in. Once the wrestlers are properly checked in, they cannot be removed. Improper check-in in most cases can be corrected. So look at that rule 6.2, go into the case book, read some examples of it, and just be prepared. But I'll say probably 10 years ago, we had a couple issues around the state on this, on the eve of this, on the Thursday opening rounds. And we pushed very hard to have the table manage just the direction of the conversation and only taking information from the official or from the teams that are due to check in. That's helped immensely, and I urge you to do that again. All right, thanks, Raj. Moving on, just a reminder, all sleeves have to have a pad to be legal. So if there's a sleeve out there, it has to have a pad to be legal. All pads must be no less than a ½ inch thick and must fit firmly to the body. Loose sleeves are not permitted. Rule 431. Go out and study some of that. You'll see a lot of different sleeves, but make sure that they're tight and they're able to stay up. Shoulder braces. We're seeing a few more shoulder braces out there. Shoulder braces can be abrasive. Ask them to put a shirt on over the top of it. In most cases through the year, we've seen that. But there's really not a lot of hardness to it. There's some plastic clips in there, but I never had a huge problem with it. But they are definitely abrasive. So we ask that any shoulder brace that's being worn, there's a form-fitted shirt over the top of that. Another piece I wanted to cover was flagrant misconduct. We're in postseason. If somebody loses their stuff, it's a biting or it's a punch or anything physical, it's flagrant misconduct. Make sure it's flagrant. This is the end of somebody's career. And don't hesitate. If it is, by all means, do not hesitate in making that call. But if you're iffy on it, and if unsportsmanlike conduct would work, go with the unsportsmanlike conduct call. A flagrant is going to end that season. Now, a couple of unsportsmanlike conducts in a match can very easily move to a flagrant. So I'm not telling you don't make the call. I'm just telling you, please be certain that it's there. And if there is no doubt, call it. Make that call and make it quick. I look for stern and swift on those calls. You guys know the rules. And if you see somebody that's clearly stepped way out of line on it, make that flagrant call and stick with it. This message is only that if you are uncertain, go with unsportsmanlike conduct. Shoelaces, untied or shoe off. It's a stalling call this year. And look at the smile from Scotty. We're going to do a little bit different here. So shoelaces loose, untied. Shoe off is a stalling call. Wait for the significant action to end before you stop the match and make that call. So they go out of bounds. Okay, then you can make that call, make the penalty points, bring them back together. No action, stalemate it, bring them in, make that call, restart the match. End of period. Same situation. The exception to this for all of us in postseason are the two situations where the match would be ended if in fact the stall call was made right away. So if you're in the 1 minute overtime tiebreaker and the wrestler who has a shoe off or loose laces has already been warned, the match is over. Stop it, make the penalty call, the match is done. Same thing for the sudden death tiebreaker, the final 30-second tiebreaker. If the offending wrestler has a warning so that the stall call will be a point, that match is over. So you really need to know your stall warnings. And in those two situations, we're going to stop the match ahead of when we normally would, make the penalty call and end the situation. Okay, questions on that? All right. Mike, you want to take us back into bench decorum, coaches and such?
Yeah, I will. Thanks, Rick. Well, I think this is probably where we start earning our money. This is where we see the competitive beast of the coaches come out. This is sections. This is if it's individuals, it might be their money maker, the guy that's going to get them to state, or if it's team, it's going to be tight. But we have to be tough too. Rick talked about it earlier. I think talking about it in the pre-meet's really, really important. Tell them what you're expecting. Also, sometimes we're tight. We don't have that 10-foot space. One of the things I'll tell them is, if you need to talk to me, you need to come up to the table. And if there's a lot of noise from the bench, that's not helping. But for sure, tell the coaches they can't come on the mat. When you're only 2 feet away because of space, they need to stay by their chairs. Their feet have to stay off the mat. That's our area. We have to control that. So I think what we do is, but when you do talk to them about misconduct, you get a warning. You come up to me and we can talk about misconduct. But if you start acting up on the bench or your bench acts up, there's a protocol of how we're supposed to act. And if we do that, that costs you a point. And if we go to overtime or tiebreaker criteria, unsportsmanlike's high up there. You might lose that duel. So we don't want to be like overcritical, but I think what we got to tell people is we got to keep this under control. And I think how the coach is acting predicts how the bench acts and how the fans act. But our thick skin, if there's a close call and you hear a yelling for two, that's an emotional reaction. They're not out of control. They're just wound up. But if it's 30 seconds or a minute later and they're still riding you about that, that's unsportsmanlike conduct. If they come up to the head table, if we made a mistake, we need to fix it and move on. If not, it's a warning for misconduct. If during the course of that, they're asking you something and they put in something like, how can you call that stalling? They're questioning your judgment and you have to give them that warning. But I think if you talk, and I always try to put a little levity to it when I do my pre-match thing during the season, especially that, I ask who the captains are. I go, hey, you're going to have a busy day today because you got to take care of your team and you're also supposed to help me control the coaches. And then I talk about our roles. I said, my job's to make it fair and to hustle and make the right call. Wrestlers, your job's to wrestle hard. And coaches, your job's to coach. And if we all do our jobs, we'll have fun tonight. That's how I end it. Last thing probably that we should just think about, and I'm not going to go over it, but before you this week, before you get on the mat, read about bad time. Rick and I were at the girls sections and we saw one, but it didn't have an effect. So what you got to do is make sure that if there's bad time, it has to be fixed that period. So make sure that you fix it then. Don't go into the next period, then it's too late. I think that's all I have on that, unless someone has questions or we want to have a little discussion on it.
Hey, Mike, those are great points. And thank you on that. So if anybody has a question, by all means, speak up here. I want to repeat or reiterate what Mike had said. It's important that you go to the locker rooms and talk to each team prior to your duels that are kicking off tomorrow. You're also going to talk to the coaches and captains mat side. And what I've always enjoyed in 43 years of doing this is getting into the locker room, chatting with them, checking on pads, checking on things like that, and show a little bit of levity, giggle and laugh and have some fun, and then stop and say, guys, we're having fun down here and we're a little bit loose. On the mat, it's nothing but business. You talk to me, I'm sir. I'll talk to you, I will be professional as well. And it just brings them back. That has helped me immensely. Same thing as Mike said, when you bring the coaches and captains to the center, reach right out to the captain and say, are your teams legal? All padding, all uniforms, all braces have been checked, everything's legal, and get them to physically and verbally announce that, yes, they are. And then have that conversation with the captains that I'm looking to you, not your coaches, you, to control any activity on your bench that happens in wrestling. It exists. It's here. But we need you to control it so it doesn't get out of hand. Unsportsmanlike conduct is not being tolerated by the National Association. They've pressed us at each state level to call it without hesitation, calling it a deterrent. Early penalties as a deterrent. We're in postseason. We don't want to have to make those calls. So threaten them that they could get one. Keep it calm. Keep your benches calm. You want to talk to the official, you talk to them at the head table. And I think that's one of the best things we can do to prevent issues. So thank you, Mike. Good coverage there. I want to circle back to the shoe off and laces off. When we talked about making the stall call, if it's a point, if it will be a point, is only in the 1 minute tiebreaker, the very first tiebreaker, 1 minute on your feet, and the final ultimate tiebreaker, not the two center 30-second tiebreakers. And again, the reason is the very first point scored wins. So if you're on your feet, laces are untied or the shoe comes off, stop the match. And it could be right in the middle of a shot. Stop the match, make that penalty if you know that penalty is a point. So you need to know head and assist. Your assistant needs to be checking and communicating that with the head. As a head official, if you're not certain, take time, make sure you understand it before you start that situation. That's going to be a very important piece. And Mike talked about head and assist, and the assistants are incredibly important in these matches. And we ask that you don't take a match off. Pay attention. Keep an eye on what's going on and support your head official. we'll get into more on that a little bit later. This
Hey,
year we
Rick.
had yes, sir.
Rick, Jason Kelly here. I got a question.
Hey, Jason.
Just hypothetical situation on the laces. And I had a kid earlier this year who had his laces double knotted, long laces. At one point I saw them come undone on the first knot. We're wrestling now. And those damn loops are still dragging on the ground. So everything was fine, but I'm just wondering if the laces become unlooped, but they're knotted and secured at the ankle, but the laces are all over the place. Do you let wrestling continue? Do we stop it, call a referee timeout to get them secured? I mean, technically they're not undone, they're just knotted, but they're loose. What's the proper call there?
You're correct, Jason. That's not a penalty. They are not untied, and in the rule book, it's very specific: untied laces or shoe off. So what I would do is correct that right away, and make sure those things are wrapped in, tucked in, or secured. There's no way they should be coming out. That's they're secured, so we don't have a rule that covers them being sloppy and floating around like that. And quite frankly, they're wrestling at their own detriment because they're the ones that's going to step on it. But it's not a penalty. We can't penalize that. You can take time and secure it, but you're going to get some grief from the other coach. You have to just remind them nothing is untied, and it would be no different than if they came out of the Velcro secure strap. And I've had a couple matches where that thing came loose and the laces came out. They weren't untied. So there's no penalty. So tuck them back in. So Jason, good question. I would just tuck those laces down into the shoe and let him know that he's on a fine line. Does that help?
Sure does.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, you bet.
Hey, Rick.
Yep.
Hey, one question too. At the end of the third period, if the shoelaces are untied and the time runs out, it's end of the match. Do you just give the stall?
Correct.
After it's done. Okay.
Correct.
Just want to make sure because if we don't do that, it could potentially be a point. It could make a difference between having a major versus a decision.
That's correct. Make that stall call because it could come out as a required point that makes a difference in the tie-breaking criteria. So make that call at the end of the match.
Okay.
Okay. Speaking of tie-breaking criteria, we've had too many situations this year where we just had things go wrong on settling tiebreakers. Almost all of our Thursday duels will be using track wrestling, I believe. So I think northern Minnesota, you guys are mostly on track wrestling up there, I would think also, correct, Scott? Okay.
Yes,
I
we
hear
are.
you.
Yes,
I see you nodding your head. I actually heard that even though you were on mute.
Yeah. It's a lot of weight on the ground.
Yeah. So track wrestling will have tiebreakers, correct. Track wrestling has it down perfect. I've gone over this with John Peterson, and there's no issue there. I think what happens in some situations is we get into a rule book, then we just added the most or the team with the least amount of the most forfeits is a loser. The team with the least forfeits wins, and I think that was specifically section F. That came out 2 years ago, and if anybody has a old rule book and you went through your criteria, you would have missed that, and that's probably what happened in a couple of situations. But make sure if you have track wrestling and you need to get into a tiebreaker, use track wrestling. It's accurate, and it'll get that taken care of for you. And I think, as everybody else said, if all of the points that has existed in the match from a stall at the end of the third period that may be meaningless, make the call, make the score proper, and then let the match end. That could be important. But again, track wrestling's got everything down, so let's stick with that. I'm going to swing over to Roger and going to cover a couple areas on girls' uniforms, ref and rover, as well as blood time, injury time, head, neck, and cervical.
Okay, far as the girls, and I ran the section at Sartell, when they're getting the skin checked, a lot of them have straps in the back that are crossing. And my feeling is that if there's spaghetti straps, just a string, that can't be allowed. You need to have a tight shirt. But if the strap is say a quarter of an inch, or at least I say half an inch, and they're flat on the body, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just when they get to be spaghetti straps, then we got a problem. And all you got to do is just ask them to wear a shirt. It's got to be a short sleeve shirt, not a long sleeves for the arms. Okay. Far as roughing and roving, Rick mentioned that, stay focused. It's not your time. If you're a rover and you're just coming in, it's not your time to take a match off and just kind of float out there. You got to stay focused and understand what's going on and be honest with your partner. If you disagree, let them know. That's fine. And then they had the official, the main official, then he's got to make a decision. But be honest, tell him what you saw, what you think, and then let him make a decision. And then another point I want to point out is that, bleeding time is taken care of first before injury or recovery time. So make sure you remember that. Bleeding time first, then we take care of injury, recovery time. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll pass it back to Rick.
Great, Roger, thank you. Thank you. Well, guys, those are the main points we wanted to bring up. Coming into postseason, it's always nice to have an opportunity to chat and go through the things that we've deemed important, and anything that has come across our desk through the year, we tried to include in here. So if there's any questions, by all means, raise your hand or throw a comment in, we'll bring it through. And in the meantime, as we break from this and get into tomorrow we'll start in most areas with the first round section. Do we have a question? Nope. Get into the first round. Just maintain that professionalism. You guys have done a fantastic job this year. We've actually had some coaches call into the league on incident reports and say, we had 4 unsportsmanlike conducts, like our first couple matches. We never had that last year, but we realized you guys aren't tolerating things that were done in the past. That's exactly what we were trying to get across. It's exactly what the National Federation charged, Charlie and I and Jason with. Make sure we shut this down because our society needs it. We need to calm this down. Wrestling is in great shape with officiating, and I think this has been a real good example, from this coach.
Rick,
but maintain your. Go ahead.
Yeah, Rick, I have one clarification. This is Jerry Reefer. Regards to Roger has some great comments, but I would suggest that one of the protocols we use for our team, which I've seen over the years that really helps, is that we use leg bands for our duels so that the fans can see it, and because a lot of times they don't know the colors. So I know sometimes you have our same colors. We decided to go red, green, but I would hope that maybe for our team tournaments coming up that we do put the bands on the kids so the parents and the people can see that don't understand sometimes wrestling with the colors the points are giving. I just suggest that we use that as a protocol for our teams. I don't know what you suggest on that, Rick, or follow up on that.
Good idea, Jerry. Good idea. Yeah, if you get to your site and they don't have leg bands, please ask them to get them. They'll have them. I'm certain that most, if they don't have them there, they just simply forgot. But definitely should put that in, because most of our programs are going to show green and red, and it helps the fans follow their team. So good point, Jerry. So yeah, what I was saying here, guys, just, maintain that professionalism that you guys have all year long on the mat. Smile, be courteous, be approachable. But as far as, high-fiving and hugging your buddy, and I understand it, I totally get it. We're all family. That stuff goes on in our locker room. Out there, we are in charge. And I think the fans require it. I know the coaches and the wrestlers require it, and we have to deliver it.
Say, Rick,
Yeah, any questions?
this is Kelly.
Hey, Kelly.
Did you want me to mention anything of what I've been seeing as far as inconsistencies?
Yeah, please.
Well, the biggest thing, like you guys have kind of talked about it a little bit, but the stalling calls, we got to be consistent on the stalling calls, whether it's fleeing the mat, whether it's doing blocking or just planting or riding. That's one of the things that I've noticed throughout the year is that one person will call it good, the next person's going to slack on that a little bit. So everybody try to be consistent on your stalling calls. The other position, the referee starting position, there's several that are getting lax on that. This time of year, it should be no problem. Hands in front, knees behind, head in the right position if you're on top, hand on the right positions if you're on top. But one of the things that I've really seen is if you're leaving the mat or you have to communicate with somebody, talk to the wrestlers and let them know what and when is going on, whether you need them to stay center, whether they're allowed to go to their coaches, stay in the wrestling area, whatever, but make for sure you communicate with them before you leave the mat. We don't need some, penalty points thrown because they left the mat and they didn't understand what was going on, etc. And then the rover, as far as the rovers, make for sure towards the end of the periods, you can see the wrestling, but you can also see that clock. The tappers, needless to say, during the sections and state, they're better, but at some of these tournaments, they're absolutely terrible about being out there on time. So if you're roving, help your head official with that time clock too. So anyhow, that's what I got.
Great. Kelly, thank you. And for those of you that may not be aware, Kelly has been one of our top observers of all officials this year. Kelly will be at the state tournament observing our 6 new officials, and I am very proud that we have 6 first-time officials at the state tournament. And so, thank you, Kelly, for that. Those are great points. Stalling is an ever ongoing challenge for us to be consistent with stalling. I think one of the big things to follow on with Kelly is that, if you see it, call it. Use the continuous action in the neutral position on the side of the mat. Only 3 things are going to occur. It's going to be the fleeing, which is a technical violation. It's going to be a stalling if you see that from either wrestler, or it's continuous action that took them off. So use those signals and bring them back. And I think that helps us a little bit more in our consistency. On the false start side, Kelly had a good point on this. And we always bring it up, and I think you guys kind of get this already, but you make sure their starting positions are accurate. But if you see somebody jump, some of these kids are nervous, so step in there. There's nothing wrong if you own that, just take that false start yourself, sit on in there, calm them down, just tell them you guys are going to go on my whistle. So hold your position. And sometimes you can just see those kids just exhale. It's like, oh, wow, thank you. And they may hear a whistle from another mat, things like that. So this is postseason. Let's allow for and be prepared for a little anxiety and possible side noise that causes some of those jumps. Now, obviously, if it's a clear jump and they're just off, make that call. But just want to make you aware of that piece of it. All right. That covers the items we wanted to talk about tonight. It's a quick list. But I think the things that were the most important that we saw through the year. So you guys are the best of the best, and we're going to go out there and get them. Postseason is now officially on. If there are no other questions, I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. And this will be recorded and it'll be sent out to you through Arbiter tomorrow.